The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty general store, and Willa Forrester pressed her hand against the window, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had traveled all the way from Boston to Brownsville, Texas, with nothing but a carpetbag, a letter from a man she had never met, and a secret that showed plainly beneath her traveling cloak. The child within her kicked as if sensing her fear, and she drew a shaky breath, wondering if Vincent Irving would take one look at her condition and send her back on the next stage east. The driver opened the door, his weathered face kind beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Here you are, miss." Brownsville, Texas. End of the line. Willa stepped down carefully, one hand steadying herself against the coach, the other instinctively cradling the swell of her belly. The September heat hit her like a physical thing, so different from the crisp autumn she had left behind in Massachusetts. The main street stretched before her, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon sun. Cowboys and townspeople moved about their business, and she felt every eye turn toward her. She had written to Vincent Irving 3 months ago, answering his advertisement for a wife in the matrimonial newspaper. His letters had been kind, straightforward, describing his cattle ranch and his need for a companion. She had been honest about everything except one thing. When she realized she was carrying another man's child, a man who had abandoned her the moment she told him, she had stopped writing back. But Vincent had sent one final letter, along with money for passage, saying he would wait for her until the end of September. Today was September 28, 1874. The driver handed down her bag. "You need help finding someone, miss. I am looking for Vincent Irving. He has a ranch outside of town." "The Irving place. Sure, I know it, about 5 miles west." "But Vincent usually comes into town on Thursdays for supplies. Today being Thursday, you might find him at the mercantile or the feed store." Willa thanked him and watched the stagecoach pull away, leaving her standing alone with her bag at her feet. She picked it up, surprised at how heavy it felt after the long journey, and started walking toward the mercantile. Each step felt like walking toward judgment. Inside the store, the air was cooler and smelled of coffee beans and leather. A woman behind the counter looked up with a smile that froze when she saw Willa's condition. Willa had loosened her cloak during the walk, too hot to keep it closed, and now there was no hiding the obvious curve of her belly. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I am looking for Vincent Irving." "Vincent?" The woman's eyebrows rose. "He is out back, loading supplies into his wagon, through that door." Willa walked through the store, past barrels of flour and bolts of fabric, and pushed open the back door. The sunlight blinded her momentarily, and then she saw him. Vincent Irving stood beside a wagon, lifting a sack of grain with an ease that spoke of years of hard work. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his blue work shirt. His face was tanned from the sun, with strong features and a jaw shadowed with stubble. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most. When he turned and saw her, his brown eyes widened. "Willa," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "Yes." She set down her bag, her hand trembling. "I am sorry I did not write. I am sorry I came anyway, even though you must not want me now." Vincent set down the grain sack and walked toward her slowly, his eyes moving from her face to her belly and back again. She forced herself to meet his gaze, even as tears threatened to spill over. She had practiced a dozen speeches during the long journey, but now all her carefully planned words vanished. "I was not honest with you," she said, her voice breaking. "I should have told you in my last letter, but I was afraid. The father wanted nothing to do with us, and I had nowhere else to go. I understand if you want me to leave. I will find work somehow, I will manage, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry for deceiving you." Vincent stood before her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. His face was unreadable, and the silence stretched between them like a chasm. Then, slowly, he smiled. It transformed his entire face, softening the hard lines and making him look younger, almost boyish. "Then our family starts today," he said simply. Willa blinked, certain she had misheard. "What? You came all this way, even carrying a child, even scared of what I might say. That takes courage." He reached out and gently took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm. "I asked for a wife because I am tired of being alone. I have a ranch that needs a woman's touch, and I need someone to build a life with. Seems to me that life just got a head start. But the child is not yours. The child will be." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "If you will have me as a husband, I will be a father to this baby. We will be a family." Willa could not stop the tears then. They spilled down her cheeks as months of fear and shame and desperate hope finally broke free. Vincent pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly, and held her while she cried. He smelled of hay and leather and something clean like soap and sunshine. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you. No need for thanks. Now let us get your bag loaded up and head home. I imagine you are tired from the journey." He picked up her carpet bag, as if it weighed nothing, and placed it in the wagon beside his supplies. Then he helped her up onto the seat, his hand steady at her waist. When he climbed up beside her and took the reins, Willa realized she was sitting next to her husband. They were not married yet, of course, but in her heart, something had already shifted. This man had looked at her in her shame and offered her grace instead of judgment. The ride to the ranch took them through open country, past fields of tall grass that waved in the hot breeze. Vincent pointed out landmarks as they went, his voice easy and conversational, as if he had not just agreed to raise another man's child. "That creek there runs through the property. Good water year-round, which is important in this heat. The cattle graze mostly on the western side, where there is more tree cover. The house is not much, but it is solid. Built it myself 3 years ago when I first claimed the land." "How much land do you have?" Willa asked, grateful to focus on practical matters. 500 acres, give or take. "It is not the biggest spread in the county, but it is all mine. No bank loans, no debts. I run about 200 head of cattle, sell them up in San Antonio every spring." "That sounds successful," Vincent shrugged. "I do well enough. It is hard work, especially doing it alone, but I have never minded hard work. My father was a rancher up in Oklahoma, taught me everything he knew before he passed. My mother died when I was young, so it was just him and me for a long time. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." "What about your family?" Willa looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "My parents died of fever when I was 16. I went to live with my aunt in Boston. She was kind enough to take me in, but she passed last year. That is when I started looking at the matrimonial advertisements." "And the baby's father?" The question was gentle, but Willa still flinched. "He was a clerk in my aunt's lawyer's office. He said he loved me, said we would marry. When I told him about the baby, he left town the next day. I later learned he already had a wife in New York." Vincent's jaw tightened, the only sign of anger. He was a fool and a coward. I was a fool, too, for believing him. "No." Vincent turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "You trusted someone who did not deserve it. That does not make you a fool, it makes him a liar." Something inside Willa's chest loosened at those words. She had spent months blaming herself, replaying every moment, wondering how she had been so blind. But Vincent said it so simply, as if there was no question about where the fault lay. The ranch appeared over a rise in the land, and Willa caught her breath. The house was indeed simple, a single-story wooden structure with a covered porch, but it looked well built and welcoming. A barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings. Horses grazed in a fenced pasture, and she could see cattle in the distance. "It is beautiful," she said, and meant it. Vincent pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help her. His hands spanned her waist, and he lifted her down carefully, as if she were made of glass. When her feet touched the ground, he did not immediately let go. "Welcome home, Willa," he said softly. She looked up at him, this man who had shown her more kindness in an hour than she had known in months, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not quite love, not yet, but the beginning of it, the seed of possibility. "Thank you, Vincent." He showed her through the house, pointing out the main room with its stone fireplace, the kitchen with its cast iron stove, and the 2 bedrooms. His was neat and spare, with a large bed covered in a quilt and a dresser that looked handmade. The 2nd bedroom was smaller, currently used for storage. "I will clear out that room for the baby," Vincent said. "We have some time, I reckon. When are you due?" The doctor said early December. 2 months, plenty of time to get everything ready. He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "About the sleeping arrangements. I know we are not married yet, and even when we are, I will not pressure you. You can have the bedroom, and I will sleep out here until you are ready for more." Willa felt her cheeks heat. She had not even thought that far ahead, too focused on simply getting here and hoping for acceptance. "We should marry as soon as possible, for the baby's sake. We can ride into town tomorrow and speak to the preacher if you are up for the journey." "I am." That night, Willa lay in Vincent's bed, which he had insisted she take despite her protests, and stared up at the dark ceiling. The baby rolled and kicked, active as always, and she placed her hands on her belly, feeling the movements beneath her palms. "We are going to be all right," she whispered to the child. "I found us a good man." In the morning, Vincent made breakfast while Willa washed and dressed in her best gown, a simple blue dress that she had let out in the waist to accommodate her growing belly. When she came out to the kitchen, she found the table set with eggs, bacon, and fresh bread. "I did not know you could cook," she said, surprised. "A man living alone learns to cook or starves," Vincent said with a grin. "I am no fancy chef, but I can manage the basics." They ate together as the sun rose through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Vincent told her about the ranch, about the hands who came to help during Roundup, about his plans to expand the herd. Willa listened, asking questions, feeling herself relax into this new life. After breakfast, Vincent hitched the horses to the wagon again, and they made the journey back into Brownsville. The preacher was an older man with kind eyes and silver hair who looked at Willa's condition without judgment. "You want to marry today?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Vincent said. "As soon as possible. I will need witnesses. Let me fetch my wife and the neighbor." Within the hour, Willa stood beside Vincent in the small church, her hand clasped in his, and repeated vows that would bind them together for life. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent leaned down and kissed her gently, almost shyly. It was Willa's first kiss as a married woman, and it sent a flutter through her stomach that had nothing to do with the baby. They signed the marriage certificate, Vincent's handwriting bold and clear, Willa's smaller and neater. Vincent Irving and Willa Forrester Irving. She was married. She had a husband and a home, and for the first time since she had discovered she was with child, she felt safe. On the ride back to the ranch, Vincent reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "How are you feeling, wife?" "Strange," she admitted. "Good, but strange. Yesterday I did not know you, and today we are married. We have plenty of time to get to know each other. No rush." But Willa found herself wanting to know everything. "Tell me something about yourself that I do not know," Vincent thought for a moment. I am afraid of chickens. Willa laughed, the sound surprising her. Chickens! When I was a boy, my mother kept a rooster that hated me. Chased me around the yard every morning. I know it is foolish, but I have never quite gotten over it. That is not foolish, it is endearing. She squeezed his hand. I am afraid of thunderstorms, always have been. I hide under the covers like a child. Then I will have to hold you during storms, Vincent said. And the way he said it, so matter-of-fact and protective, made Willa's heart skip. Over the following days, they settled into a routine. Vincent worked the ranch while Willa made the house into a home. She cleaned and organized, sewed curtains for the windows, and started a small garden near the kitchen. Her body moved slowly, heavy with the baby, but she was grateful for the work. It kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Vincent was patient and kind, always asking if she needed anything, making sure she did not overexert herself. He cleared out the second bedroom and built a cradle from smooth pine wood, sanding it until it was silky beneath her fingers. He rode into town and came back with soft fabric for baby clothes, blankets, and diapers. You did not have to buy all this, Willa said, looking at the pile of supplies. Of course I did. The baby will need them. He said it so simply, as if it were obvious, as if the child were already his. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Willa worked on sewing a tiny gown. Vincent whittled beside her, shaping a piece of wood into what looked like a toy horse. For the baby, he said when he caught her watching. Every child needs toys. Willa set down her sewing and turned to him. Vincent, why are you doing all this? You did not have to marry me. You could have sent me away. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his knife moving steadily over the wood. My mother was in a similar situation when she met my father. She was carrying another man's child, a man who had died in a mining accident before they could marry. My father loved her anyway, married her, and raised my older brother as his own. I never knew until after my father died and my brother told me. He wanted me to know what kind of man our father was. What happened to your brother? He died in the war, fought for the Union, took a bullet at Shiloh. Vincent's voice was heavy with old grief. He was a good man, like our father. I figured if I could be half the man they were, I would do all right. Willa reached over and placed her hand on his arm. You are a good man, Vincent Irving. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them, not quite love yet, but deeper than friendship. A recognition of kindred spirits, two people who had known loss and loneliness and had found each other against all odds. Can I feel the baby kick? Vincent asked suddenly, almost shyly. Willa took his hand and placed it on her belly, pressing his palm against the spot where the baby was most active. They sat there in silence, waiting, and then the baby delivered a strong kick right against Vincent's hand. His eyes widened in wonder. That is amazing. Is it always like that? Especially at night. The baby seems to think nighttime is for practicing acrobatics. Vincent grinned, his hand still on her belly, feeling another kick. Strong, that is good. They sat there as the sun sank below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, Vincent's hand on Willa's belly, feeling their child move. Their child. Somehow, in the space of a week, it had become theirs. That night, as Willa prepared for bed, she heard a knock on her bedroom door. She opened it to find Vincent standing there in his nightshirt, looking uncertain. I heard you moving around. Is everything all right? I cannot get comfortable, Willa admitted. The baby is pressing on everything and my back aches. May I come in? She nodded and he entered, leaving the door open for propriety. Turn around. Willa did and felt his hands settle on her lower back, his thumbs pressing gently into the muscles on either side of her spine. She gasped at how good it felt, the ache easing under his careful ministrations. better?" he asked. "Much. Where did you learn to do that? Horses get sore backs too. I figured the principle was the same." Willa laughed, relaxing under his touch. "Did you just compare me to a horse?" "A very beautiful horse," Vincent said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. He worked on her back for several more minutes until the ache was gone, then stepped away. "Try to sleep now. Call if you need anything." "Vincent," she said as he reached the door. "Yes. You can close the door when you leave. I trust you." His eyes met hers across the room, warm in the lamplight. "Good night, Willa." "Good night." The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Vincent finished the cradle and set it up beside Willa's bed. They made lists of names, debating the merits of each one. Willa sewed clothes and blankets while Vincent worked on making the house warmer for winter, sealing gaps and chopping extra firewood. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams for the future. Vincent told her about his plans for the ranch, how he wanted to build a bigger house someday with a room for each child. Willa told him about her love of reading, how she had dreamed of being a teacher before her parents died. "You could still teach," Vincent said, "when the baby is older. Brownsville needs a school teacher. The children have to travel all the way to the next county for proper schooling." "Do you really think I could?" "Why not? You are smart and patient. You would be perfect for it." The idea took root in Willa's mind, something to dream about, to plan for. A future beyond just survival. One morning in late October, Willa woke to find frost on the windows. She dressed warmly and went out to the kitchen, where Vincent was already up, stoking the fire. "Cold enough for you?" he asked with a smile. "I cannot believe how quickly the temperature dropped." "It was warm just yesterday." "That is Texas for you. The weather changes on a whim." He poured her a cup of coffee, which she sipped gratefully. "I need to ride out and check on the cattle today, make sure they are all accounted for before winter really sets in. Will you be all right here alone?" "Of course. I have plenty to keep me busy." But after Vincent left, the house felt empty and too quiet. Willa tried to sew, but her back ached and her hands were clumsy. The baby had dropped lower in recent days, and the midwife in town had told her to expect the birth any time now. She was washing dishes when the first pain hit, a tightening across her belly that made her gasp and grip the edge of the basin. It passed after a moment, and she told herself it was nothing. But when another came 20 minutes later, she knew the baby was coming. Willa tried not to panic. Vincent had said he would be back by evening. She could wait until then. But as the afternoon wore on and the pains grew stronger and closer together, she realized the baby had its own timeline. She made her way to the bedroom, breathing through each contraction. She had clean linens ready, towels, everything the midwife had told her to prepare. But she was alone, and fear crept in around the edges of her determination. Just as the sun began to set, she heard the sound of hoofbeats outside. She called out, her voice weak, and then Vincent was there, bursting through the bedroom door, his face pale. "Willa, I came back early. I had a feeling. Is it the baby?" "Yes," she gasped as another pain seized her. "I am sorry. I know it is early, but the baby does not care." "I am riding for the midwife right now. Hold on." "No." Willa grabbed his hand. "There is no time. It is happening too fast." Vincent looked terrified, but he did not run. Instead, he took a deep breath and squeezed her hand. All right, I have birthed calves and foals. I can do this." "We can do this." He washed his hands in the basin and rolled up his sleeves. "Tell me what to do." Willa had read books about childbirth, and the midwife had explained the process, but now that it was happening, everything was a blur of pain and pressure. Vincent stayed beside her, holding her hand, encouraging her, following her instructions as best he could. Hours passed in agony. Willa screamed and cried and crushed Vincent's hand in hers. He never flinched, never left her side, his voice steady and calm even though she could see the fear in his eyes. "You are doing so well," he told her. "So strong. Just a little more." And then, as the moon rose outside the window, the baby came. Vincent caught the tiny, slippery body in his hands, his face a mask of wonder and terror. The baby let out a lusty cry, and Willa sobbed in relief. "It is a boy," Vincent said, his voice choked with emotion. "Willa, we have a son." He cleaned the baby with gentle hands, then wrapped him in a soft blanket and placed him in Willa's arms. She looked down at the tiny red face, the shock of dark hair, the perfect little fingers curled into fists, and felt her heart expand beyond anything she had thought possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We are so happy you are here." Vincent sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, looking down at the baby. His eyes were wet with tears. What should we name him? Willa thought of all the names they had discussed, but only one felt right. "William, after your brother," Vincent's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. William Irving, our son." Vincent pressed a kiss to Willa's forehead, then to the baby's. "William Irving, welcome to the family." The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings. William was a hungry baby, demanding and loud, but Willa had never been happier. Vincent was devoted to both of them, changing diapers, walking the floor with William when he cried, doing everything he could to help. One night, Willa woke to find Vincent's side of the bed empty. They had started sharing the bed after William's birth, both of them too exhausted to maintain separate sleeping arrangements. She heard soft murmuring from the main room and got up to investigate. Vincent stood by the fireplace, William cradled in his arms, swaying gently and singing a lullaby in a soft, off-key voice. The sight made Willa's throat tight with emotion. This man who had owed them nothing had given them everything. He would not settle, Vincent said when he saw her. "I did not want him to wake you. Come back to bed," Willa said. "All of us." They settled William in the cradle beside the bed, and Vincent climbed in next to Willa. She curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, and felt his arm come around her. "Vincent," she whispered into the darkness, "I love you." She felt him go still, then his arm tightened around her. "Say that again." "I love you. I have been falling in love with you since the day you said our family starts today." Vincent turned to face her, his hand cupping her cheek. "I love you too, Willa. I think I started falling the moment I saw you standing there, so scared and brave at the same time." He kissed her then, not the gentle, shy kisses of before, but deeper, full of emotion and promise. Willa kissed him back, pouring all her gratitude and affection and love into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I know we have to wait," he said. "After the baby, you need time to heal." "Soon," Willa promised. "Soon we will be husband and wife in every way." 6 weeks later, on a cold December night with snow falling outside the windows, they made their marriage complete. Vincent was gentle and patient, making sure Willa felt nothing but pleasure. Afterwards, lying tangled together beneath the quilts, Willa felt truly married for the first time. "Are you all right?" Vincent asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I am perfect. That was perfect. I was afraid I would hurt you. You could never hurt me." Willa kissed his chest, right over his heart. "You are the gentlest man I have ever known." William cried then, demanding to be fed, and they both laughed. Vincent got up and brought the baby to Willa, then climbed back into bed beside them, watching as she nursed their son. "I never imagined this," he said softly. "A wife, a child, a real family. I thought I would spend my life alone. Not anymore. You are stuck with us now. Best thing that ever happened to me." Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly at home. Vincent had cut down a small pine tree and set it up in the main room. Willa made decorations from scraps of fabric and dried fruit. They had little money for presents, but Vincent carved William a set of wooden blocks, and Willa knitted Vincent a thick scarf in deep blue wool. "It is perfect," Vincent said, wrapping it around his neck. "I will wear it every day." "I made you something too," Willa said, pulling out a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the kind she had seen in the mercantile and fallen in love with. "I thought you might like to write down your thoughts or keep records of the ranch." Vincent looked at the journal, then at her, his eyes suspiciously bright. "This must have cost a fortune." "I saved the egg money from selling to the mercantile." "It is not much, but I wanted you to have something special." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Thank you. I love it. I love you." They spent Christmas Day together, the three of them, and Willa thought she had never been happier. This time last year, she had been alone and terrified, not knowing where her life was headed. Now she had a husband who loved her, a healthy son, and a home. It was more than she had ever dared to dream. Winter passed in a cocoon of domesticity. Vincent worked the ranch while Willa cared for William in the house. The baby grew quickly, gaining weight and strength, his dark eyes alert and curious. He looked like Vincent, Willa thought, with the same strong features and easy smile. One day in early spring, as Willa was hanging laundry to dry in the warm breeze, a rider appeared on the horizon. Vincent was out with the cattle, and Willa felt a moment of fear. But as the rider drew closer, she recognized Mrs. Patterson, the preacher's wife from town. "Mrs. Irving." The woman called out, dismounting. "I hope I am not intruding." "Not at all. Please come in. I just made coffee." Over coffee and fresh bread, Mrs. Patterson explained her visit. "We are forming a committee to start a school in Brownsville. Vincent mentioned at church that you had experience with teaching, and I wondered if you might be interested in helping." Willa's heart leaped. "I would love to, but I have William to care for. We are thinking of starting in the fall, which would give you time to wean the baby if you wished. And many of the mothers bring their infants to work with them. We could make accommodations." After Mrs. Patterson left, Willa could hardly contain her excitement. When Vincent came home that evening, she told him about the visit. "What do you think?" she asked. "Would you mind if I taught school?" "Mind? Willa, I think it is a wonderful idea. You would be an excellent teacher." He pulled her into his arms. "I want you to be happy, to have more than just cooking and cleaning. If teaching makes you happy, then you should do it. You are amazing, you know that. I just want to take care of you, the way you take care of me." That spring, as the wildflowers bloomed across the prairie and the cattle fattened on new grass, Willa realized she was pregnant again. She told Vincent one night after they had put William to bed, watching his face carefully for his reaction. His whoop of joy nearly woke the baby. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "Another baby. Willa, that is wonderful. You are not worried about the expense or the work." "We will manage. We always do. Besides, William needs a brother or sister to play with." This pregnancy was easier than the first, without the stress and fear that had marked her carrying of William. Willa bloomed, her cheeks pink with health, her body strong from the work of running the household. Vincent was attentive and loving, always making sure she did not overdo things. In September, Willa started teaching at the new school in Brownsville. She brought William with her, setting up a corner of the classroom with toys and blankets where he could play while she taught. The children loved him, and he loved the attention. Willa discovered she was born to teach. She loved watching the children's faces light up when they understood a new concept, loved helping them learn to read and write. Vincent was proud of her, bragging to everyone in town about his wife, the school teacher. In December, just after William's first birthday, Willa gave birth to a daughter. Vincent delivered this baby too, more confident now but no less awed by the miracle of birth. They named her Sarah, after Willa's mother, and she was a peaceful baby from the start, with blonde hair and blue eyes like Willa. "Our family is complete," Vincent said, holding Sarah while William toddled around at his feet. "Two perfect children and the most beautiful wife in Texas." "Flatterer," Willa said, but she smiled. The years passed in a blur of happiness. William grew into a sturdy, confident boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about ranching and cattle. Sarah was quieter, more studious, and loved to sit in Willa's classroom and watch her teach. Two more children followed, another boy and girl, born 2 years apart. Vincent expanded the ranch, just as he had planned, building a bigger house with enough bedrooms for everyone. The cattle business thrived and they were comfortable, if not wealthy. Willa continued to teach, becoming a beloved figure in Brownsville, known for her patience and dedication. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Willa into town for dinner at the hotel restaurant, their first night away from the children in years. Over steak and wine, they talked about their life together, marveling at how far they had come. "You ever regret it?" Willa asked. Taking on a pregnant woman with nothing to offer, Vincent reached across the table and took her hand. "Not for a single second. That day you stepped off the stage, coach, was the luckiest day of my life. You gave me everything I ever wanted. You saved me, Vincent. You saved both of us." "No," he said firmly. "We saved each other." That night, in the hotel room, they made love with the slow, deep passion of two people who knew each other's bodies perfectly, who had built a life together from nothing. Afterwards, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Willa thought about the terrified girl she had been, stepping off that stage coach with her secrets and her shame. "I am glad I was brave enough to come here," she said softly. "So am I." Vincent pulled her closer. "So am I." 20 years after that first meeting, Willa stood on the porch of their large, comfortable home and watched her family gathered in the yard. William, now a man of 21, was teaching his youngest brother to rope a fence post. Sarah sat beneath a tree with her sister, both of them reading. Vincent was showing the neighbor's boy how to shoe a horse, his movements patient and sure despite the gray in his hair. This was the life she had built, the family she had been given. All because one man had looked at her on the worst day of her life and said, "Then our family starts today." Vincent looked up and caught her watching. He smiled, that same warm smile that had stolen her heart 10 years ago, and she smiled back. He said something to the neighbor boy and walked toward her, his stride still strong and confident. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, climbing the porch steps. "Just how lucky I am, how much I love our life." Vincent pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, fitting against him the way she had for 20 years. "I love you, Willa Irving." "I love you too, Vincent Irving." Their children's laughter floated on the warm Texas breeze, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. It was an ordinary moment in an ordinary day, but to Willa it was everything. This was happiness. This was home. This was the family that had started on a dusty September day when a desperate woman met a man with a generous heart. William approached the porch with his brother in tow. "Ma, Pa, we are thinking of riding into town. Sarah wants some new books from the mercantile." "Take the wagon," Vincent said, "and be back before dark." They watched their oldest son round up his siblings, his natural leadership evident in the way the younger ones followed him without question. When the wagon pulled away, Willa leaned against Vincent's chest with a sigh. "They are growing up so fast." "That they are. William will be wanting to start his own ranch soon, I reckon." "Does that make you sad?" "A little. But mostly I am proud. We raised good children, Willa. Strong, kind, hardworking. That is all any parent can hope for." That evening, after the children returned and dinner was finished, The family gathered in the main room as they did every night. Vincent read aloud from a book while Willa sewed, and the children played quiet games or did their schoolwork. It was a peaceful routine, one they had established years ago and never tired of. Later in their bedroom, Vincent brushed out Willa's hair, another nightly ritual. His hands were gentle, working through the tangles with care. In the mirror, Willa could see the lines on both their faces, the marks of time and hard work and laughter. She was 45 now, Vincent nearly 50, but when he looked at her, his eyes held the same warmth they had that first day. "You remember when you asked me why I agreed to marry you?" Vincent said softly. "I remember everything about that day. I never told you the whole truth, the real reason." Willa turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I told you about my mother and father, and that was true, but there was more. When I saw you standing there, so scared but trying so hard to be brave, carrying that baby with no one to help you, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Not because of how you looked, though you were pretty enough to take my breath away, but because of your strength. Your courage. I fell in love with you right then and there before we even spoke." Willa felt tears prick her eyes. "Vincent, I know it sounds foolish, falling in love at first sight, but it is true. Every day since then has just proven that I was right to trust my heart." She turned in his arms and kissed him, deep and sweet. "I fell in love with you the moment you said our family starts today. Those 5 words changed my entire life." They held each other in the lamplight, two people who had found each other when they both needed saving, who had built something beautiful out of desperation and hope. As the years continued to roll by, their family grew even larger. William married a sweet girl from town and built his own ranch on the northern edge of Vincent's property. Sarah married a teacher from San Antonio, and they settled in Brownsville, where she continued her mother's legacy of teaching. The younger children grew and found their own paths, always knowing they had a home to return to. Vincent and Willa became grandparents, then great-grandparents. Their hair turned white, their bodies slowed, but their love never diminished. They sat together on the porch in their old age, holding hands and watching the sunset, grateful for every moment they had been given. On a warm evening in late spring, 35 years after their wedding, Vincent turned to Willa with that same smile that had first captured her heart. "Still glad you stepped off that stage, Coach?" he asked. "Every single day," she said, squeezing his hand. "Every single day." And there, on the porch of the home they had built together, surrounded by the family they had created, Vincent and Willa Irving sat together and watched the stars come out over Texas. Their love story had started with 5 simple words, but it had grown into something vast and beautiful, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and choosing to love someone with your whole heart. The male bride who had arrived with nothing but hope, and a secret had found everything she needed in a cowboy who saw past her circumstances to her heart. And the lonely rancher who had placed an advertisement for a wife had found a partner, a lover, and a best friend who made every day brighter just by being in it. Their family had started on that September day in 1874, when Vincent had looked at Willa and chosen to accept her exactly as she was. Now, decades later, that family had grown to include children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and a love story that would be told and retold for generations. As the night deepened and the air grew cool, Vincent helped Willa to her feet, and they walked inside together, still hand in hand after all these years. Behind them, the Texas prairie stretched out under the stars, wild and beautiful and home to the family that had started with a single act of kindness. This was their happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending but something better, A real love, tested by time and hardship and the ordinary struggles of life, and found to be unbreakable. They had built something lasting, something beautiful, something worth every risk and every moment of fear. And as they settled into bed that night, Vincent's arm around Willa's shoulders, her head resting on his chest like it had for 35 years, they both knew without speaking that they had found what everyone searches for. A love that transforms, that heals, that makes all the difficult parts of life worthwhile. The mail-order bride and the cowboy had become so much more than those simple labels. They had become partners, parents, grandparents, pillars of their community, and most importantly, they had become each other's home. Their story was proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love can bloom even in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the Wild West, if you are brave enough to take the risk and kind enough to see the value in another person's heart. As sleep claimed them both, their breathing synchronized after years of sleeping side by side, the ranch house settled around them with the comfortable creaks and sighs of a well-loved home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure, but tonight was perfect. Tonight was enough. Tonight was everything they had ever needed, wrapped up in the simple comfort of being together. Their family had indeed started on that day 35 years ago, and it had grown beyond anything either of them could have imagined. But the foundation had always been the same. Two people who chose each other, who chose love, who chose to build something beautiful out of nothing but hope and determination. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.